Hey everyone, this is Rocky, and welcome to this final part in the series on how to write a paragraph. In this part, we're just going to look at a few examples that tie the ideas together from the previous parts. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so we have our first example. At first glance, it looks to be a complete paragraph, but please put your video on pause and see if you can figure out what is missing here. Okay, so hopefully you immediately notice that we're missing a lead-in controlling idea in the paragraph, which we call a topic sentence. So as you start reading, you see the pronoun he, which refers to someone we don't know, not identified. And if you're familiar with Chinese history, you might be able to eventually figure it out. Even if you are, you might still struggle depending on how much you remember. And anyway, you shouldn't have to work so hard to solve the puzzle. The author should make it easy for you. So we have part of the person's name I can never figure out in Chinese if it's the first or the last name. So talking about this person who, and we don't know who it is. But if we just add a simple controlling topic sentence, then we know that who this person is immediately, and now the paragraph makes a lot more sense. So very simple. Make sure you always include a topic sentence. Let's take a look at another example. Here's a very simple one that's completely made up. But not only do we not have a topic sentence here, even more confusing is that we don't have any focus or coherence in the paragraph. The author here is talking about increases in GDP, then decreases in another financial indicator, concerns, but then good things about startups, and then bad things about startups, and they're all different years. Even if we add a topic sentence here, I don't know if it'll be clear what's going on. So you also want to make sure your paragraphs are coherent and follow a logical progression of ideas. We talked about it a little bit in previous videos. Try not to bounce around between ideas. Have one topic sentence with one main idea, and then provide evidence that supports that, not evidence that's going to different points or arguing against yourself, even worse. Otherwise, your readers will be extremely confused, and I see this kind of bouncing around in paragraphs all the time, so be careful not to fall prey to this. Alright, let's take a look at our next example. Okay, we have a big one here. This time we're going to try to put a scrambled paragraph back together. But there's a couple problems with this paragraph. One is that everything's out of order because I put it out of order. This one is about Charles Ponzi, which is of course the infamous original Ponzi schemer. And we're going to get a little sense of how much mischief he was involved in. But right now it's confusing. So the first thing we have to do is identify our topic sentence and put it at the top. So put your video on pause and see if you can figure out where the topic sentence is. Alright, hopefully you found this topic sentence in the middle here. So we have a list of crimes, but we don't have a topic sentence introducing that we're going to talk about those crimes. This sentence does that, calls him a lifelong criminal, and now we have his life of crimes. So now the paragraph makes a little more sense. Also, it looks like this paragraph has a concluding thought. Let's see if we can find that and put that at the bottom. Go ahead and put your video on pause and see if you can find it. Okay, hopefully you found this idea here towards the top. And, of course, if he's dying, broken, alone, that would make sense to go at the end. And like I said, although paragraphs don't always need a concluding thought, this is a story, so it makes sense to have a conclusion here. Okay, so now we have all the data, details, and specifics. And we have to put this in order. Now, I said that I scrambled these sentences up, but I also removed the transitions. So there really aren't any references to time or to how the events are related to each other. And although this is a bit of an extreme example because I removed all of them, it's a good example of how difficult it can make things for your reader to follow the ideas. So for example, let's take a look and see if we can figure out where things go. So in the United States, he participated in a scheme to smuggle illegal alien immigrants. He was in an Atlanta jail. He moved to Boston. We don't know when. He moved to Jacksonville. He's all over the place. He's in Tampa. Somewhere in here, yeah, he's in Montreal. So when did he go to Canada? Did he come back to the United States? Or did he go to Montreal after the United States and that was it? It doesn't look like it because eventually he was deported to Italy when he was caught on a port stop in New Orleans. This is all confused, and it's very, very difficult to figure things out. So we need our transitions back, so I'm going to stick them back here. Okay, we've got our transitions back. So we have our topic sentence, introducing the idea of lifelong crime. And we have our concluding sentence that after this life of crime, he died broken alone. And now we have our body sentences with all the details, data, and specifics. They're still scrambled, but now we have all of the transitions and connections and clues to be able to put them in the right order. Okay, so we have some references to time. That's the easiest way to start. Let's see if we can put this together. If you want to try and do this by yourself first, you can put the video on pause and see if you can put this together like a puzzle, and then see if it matches with the solution that we give here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So the first thing we notice that we have some dates, 1911, 1907, 1918. So I'm going to start by sticking this in the beginning. Now, it might not necessarily be the first event, but at least we can get these in order. So let's get our dates here. And we have the 3 dates, and then we're probably going to have to fill some things in between. Okay. So in 1907, he served 3 years in a Montreal jail for forging a check company. Okay, so he was in Canada before he was in the United States, it looks like, or maybe he was in the U.S. and moved to Canada, I'm not sure. But in 1911, after returning to the United States, so again, this is a little connection for the reader. So we know that, because of this word, we know that he was in the United States before 1907, and he returned here after. Okay, he participated in a scheme to struggle in illegal Italian immigrants into the country. He was arrested and served 2 years in an Atlanta jail. So these two seem to follow from each other. Let's see if there's anything in the middle as we read through. From 1918 to 1920, Ponzi made millions. Okay, so something's missing here, because we have him in Atlanta in a jail, and then years later he's making millions. So something happened here. He finally served a 7-year sentence. That's for mail fraud. That idea of mail fraud hasn't been introduced yet, so that's not the next sentence. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, after his release, so it looks like he was in and out of jail a lot of times, so we don't know if this is necessarily the next sentence, but we do have some clues here. I'll move this up, because we have this idea of moving. So it looks like he moved a couple times. He moved to Boston, he moved to Florida. But we need something that prefaces his making millions. So probably this is going to be his infamous Ponzi scheme. So he was in an Atlanta jail after his release. This is probably what happened. He moved to Boston, and it was there several years later where he began his famous, or we should probably say infamous, Ponzi scheme, promising 200% returns in 90 days based on international postage arbitrage. So we have this idea of the mail fraud thing happening, and now it makes sense to transition into this idea where he was making millions, because this was his big scheme, but eventually the scheme collapsed and he was sent to jail. Okay, so up to here I think we're pretty good. We've got this started here. He finally served the 7-year sentence. Now, this could go here, but the word finally makes me think that something happened in between where he didn't serve his sentence for mail fraud. So let's see if we can find what happened in between here. Was he released? Did he escape? Yeah, because here he's getting deported to Italy, but there's still other stuff in the United States, so something else happened here. Well, him getting sentenced to a Florida jail, we don't really know how he got to Florida. So here we need him to get to Florida, and it looks like here it is. So we have a lot of clues here, a lot of connections for the reader. Because here he's sent to jail, but after being released on bail, he fled to jail, so he skipped bail. That's how he got to Florida. And instead of learning from his postage fraud conviction, which refers back to the big scheme here, he started a new scheme. Okay, so then he finally served the 7-year sentence. Probably not. It looks like something happened here in Florida, so let's look down. Well, something before him getting sentenced to jail. What did he do? Okay, this looks like a new scheme. So, and yeah, this scheme refers to swampland, so it would make sense that that's in Florida. So probably this goes here. There might be something else, but let's see. So he promised double returns on the land, so he was doing this land scheme. And it looks like here he could go to jail for this. So a local court sentenced him to a year of jail time in Florida State Jail for securities charges. And again, it doesn't really make sense for him to serve the 7-year sentence, because that's way up in Massachusetts. He's still down in Florida. So he's got to get out of jail again somehow. It looks like he appealed the charge. I don't know. This is before everything's connected with computers, so I guess you could do what you wanted in different places. But you would think he would have been in the news all over the place for that Ponzi scheme, but okay. Yeah, it looks like, okay, so he appealed the charge. If this is him leaving the jail, the Florida State Jail, yeah, then he moved to Tampa, where he tried to flee the country on a merchant ship. He was called on a port stop to New Orleans and deported back to Massachusetts to serve the rest of his sentence for his original Ponzi scheme. Now, this all makes sense here. And now, he finally served the 7-year sentence for mail fraud. That makes sense here, because he's deported back to Massachusetts. When he was released, he was immediately deported to Italy, so now released from Massachusetts jail and deported to Italy. Back in his home country, another link for the reader. He continued to participate in schemes, mostly unsuccessfully, and we're to our conclusion. So we've got our whole paragraph in order now, and it was a lot easier to do that, or, well, it probably was impossible to do it before without the transitions, but all of these links after such and such happened, or referring back to previous events, giving clues for the reader, signposts, this is the kind of way you want to connect your ideas so that readers can understand how you're getting from point A to point B to point C. Okay, let's look at our final example. In this paragraph, we actually have two main ideas mixed together. So we really need to make two paragraphs. So put your video on pause and see if you can find the two topic sentences for our paragraphs. Okay, so we have a couple topic sentences here. One is a descriptive paragraph where it introduces this idea of noodling. So let's put that up top here. And if you haven't seen this, you can check out some videos online. The one where I got the information for these example paragraphs is, it's got a lot of bad language and stuff, so just fair warning before you look at it. If you don't like that kind of stuff, then look at some other videos. Okay, so we've got this descriptive idea, and if you look down here, we have another idea of an instructions paragraph. So let's put that next. So we have a description of the practice and then how to do it successfully. So these are two different paragraphs. Okay, so let's find out which information goes where. Let's take it sentence by sentence. So the first sentence, this looks like a step. So I'm going to stick it in this paragraph. It's not in the correct order, but it looks like it's pretty crazy. But okay. This next paragraph here, is it a step? It's not a step, so it probably goes in our descriptive paragraph. Let's take the next one. This is a step. That's a step. That's a step. That's a step. Up to here, these are all steps. Stick them there. But this is just a general descriptive sentence, but it's not a step. So it goes up here. And then, yeah, it looks like these are all steps here too. Okay, so at least we've got our two paragraphs separated here. Let's see if we can put them both in order. So we have our topic sentence, and this is only a 3-sentence paragraph. It could probably be more descriptive with more examples, but it's just our example here. So okay, so the reason that I'm going to put this second is because this sentence here, remember, body sentence we said can be data, details, or specifics. It's not really a specific example. It's not a piece of data, but it is a detail. So we have our topic sentence, we have a detail about it, and then we have what is basically a concluding thought. So we've got this first paragraph together, pretty easy. Let's take a look at this next one. We have an instructions paragraph. We've got our topic sentence. And okay, when we're dealing with instructions, usually we have a first step. So let's see if we can find the first one. I don't see any sentence that starts out with the word first, but if you look down at this sentence here, you will see that the word first is in the middle of the sentence. So we've got our first step. Stick it up here. So catfish hide in holes. So first, you have to find the holes by feeling around with your feet. Okay. This next part is talking about the hands, so we're not really there yet. You can't search for holes by diving and looking because the water is usually brown or orange. So that is a detail about the first step. Because you're feeling around with your feet, so you might wonder why you can't just look. But that's because the water's probably too opaque to see through. Okay, we still need something else to transition. So after you find a hole, that's with your feet. So that goes up here. After you find a hole, you have to dive down and put your hands in. Now, you just stay still and wait for the crazed monsters to chomp down on your hand. Should probably put an exclamation point there because that sounds pretty nuts. Okay, grab it by the gills. That could go next, but let's see what else we have. Now, we still have something else here. Again, these transitions really help us because we have a claws here. So one of these giant catfish bites you on the hand. And we have a claws here that transitions. So while the fish is biting you, so it refers back, and we know it goes here. Stay patient while your partner dives under and ties a rope around it. The rope helps prevent the fish from going back into the hole. Then you grab it by the gills and yank with all your might. At this point, you're ready to pull up the fish. Okay, because these... Oh, we have one more detail that needs to go above. So, because these giant fish can bite like a giant pit bull, according to local noodling champion Lee McFarland, it's a good idea to put on special gloves before performing the step. So this probably goes with the hands. Yeah, this would go here. So after telling the person to put their hands in. So this refers back to this idea to protect your hands. Okay, now you just stay still. And this probably goes here, because this last sentence is more of a concluding remark. Okay, so we've got our two paragraphs separated, and now they're all in order, and you can see that the ideas flow coherently in a logical fashion. It's much easier to read, of course. Before it was just a hodgepodge of ideas, but again, I see these problems every day from people of all levels of writing, where they're writing paragraphs with no topic sentences, or they're mixing two paragraphs together, or there's no focus, or they don't have enough transitions to guide the reader. So try to write your paragraphs more like this, where you have a clear controlling idea, you have data, details, and specifics rather than just vague ideas. Everything's in order, everything's connected together, and the reader can follow your ideas very easily. Okay, so that's it for our examples, and the last part of this lesson will be to try a few by yourself, so you can proceed on to that next part. I hope the examples were helpful and a bit funny to look at, and I'll see you in the next lesson.